Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Victor, and I enjoy illustrating scriptures from the Bible. I create these illustrations to hopefully encourage people, but most importantly, share the gospel of Jesus Christ. Today, I want to show you a piece I call Worry Not, which is inspired by Luke 12:24, which says, "Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable you are than birds." In this verse, Jesus addresses the issue of worry. And worrying is an emotion that if you feed it, it can create fear, anxiety, frustration, stress, doubt, depression. It can even cloud our judgment if we allow it to. Unfortunately, worrying is something that we will all experience in our lives. And I'm not talking about that feeling you get when you realize you forgot to set your alarm and you're running late for school or work. No, I'm talking about that feeling you get when you're getting ready for an important job interview for a job that you want, or when you're about to take a final exam that you need to pass, or when you're waiting for the medical results for something that has been troubling you or a loved one, or when financially you feel like you're drowning and you're not sure how you're going to pay the bills. If you're going through anything like this, I can relate, because everything I've said, I've been through in my life. I'm on the other side of it now. But at the time, when I was facing those challenges, I felt like there was no light at the end of my tunnel. And not only that, but I started feeding my worries and my fears by imagining up a whole bunch of negative hypotheticals, a whole bunch of what-if scenarios that never happened. This reminds me of the following verse in Luke 12:25, which says, "Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to your life?" The answer is very simple. None of us can. Worrying only takes away from your life, takes away from your peace, away from your joy, your health, your overall well-being. Now, going back to Luke 12:24, I find it interesting that God mentions the raven, as ravens are known to be some of the most intelligent birds in the world. And one of their amazing qualities is the ability to solve problems. They have been observed using tools to obtain food, solve multi-step puzzles, and use strategic plans. For example, in the wild, ravens have been known to alert wolves to an animal carcass. This allows the wolves to tear open the carcass, allowing the ravens to feast on the meat that they couldn't access alone. That's pretty thoughtful planning. Food is obviously very important to them, but they're not obsessed or worried about finding a way to stockpile food year-round in the spring or summer because they're afraid it's going to run out. With the amount of intelligence the raven has, if there is one bird that would have the ability to store food in a very methodical way year-round, it would be the raven. But it doesn't. Why? Because they even know that God will provide. And sure, do they store food during the winter? Yes. But it's not out of worry per se, but out of having an understanding of what's to come. God has given them the wisdom to plan ahead and store food accordingly, so when winter arrives, there is no reason to worry. I want us to look at how God takes care of the ravens. God is not only providing the ravens with the material, but also the know-how. Luke 12:24 finishes off with saying, "How much more valuable you are than birds." Have you ever wondered how many birds are out there in the world? Back in 2021, an effort was made to estimate how many birds were in the world, and the result was a conservative estimation of around 50 billion. Other studies, however, have estimated it to be as high as 400 billion birds worldwide. If the latter is true, that would mean birds outnumber us humans 50-1. If God can take care of 400 billion birds, and let's not forget the rest of the animal kingdom, why not you, his precious creation? We forget that God values us tremendously. And because of this, we conclude that he must not care about us. That couldn't be further from the truth. God says that you are more valuable than the birds. In the US, I can go to a pet store and buy a parakeet, one of these cute looking guys, for around $45, maybe even cheaper. In 2023, a paper was published that reviewed 200 hospitals in the US and analyzed the average cost of blood. The average price per pint of blood they charged their patients was around $634. Now, This price varies considerably depending on the facility, the procedure, insurance, and so forth. But do you know how many parakeets you can buy for $634? Right? Here's a fun fact. The average adult has around 10 pints of blood, which is roughly only 8% of your body weight. Now think about that. Think about that in monetary terms and the value of a human. But God isn't looking at you like some type of monetary object. Your value far exceeds that. Because in Psalms 139:14 it says, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Fearfully in this context meaning with great reverence and respect. It doesn't say that you were below average made or you were okay made or you were made as an afterthought. You were created by a loving God and you are his marvelous creation and you were made for a unique purpose in this life. In John 3:16 it says, For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. John 3:16 doesn't start off by saying, For God so loved the birds of the air, or the fish in the sea, or the beasts of the fields. No, he gave his only Son to us, mankind. He gave humanity the greatest gift. And this is just some proof of how much God values and loves and cares for you. And if there is something that is worrying you, causing stress, anxiety in your life, place it in his hands. But many of us forget to do that. And we prefer to carry that burden by ourselves. And then we wonder, why is God not doing something about it? It's hard for God to do something about your worry when you prefer to hold on to it. This brings me back to this story. Several years ago, I moved to a new city and I was looking for a new job. I remember submitting my resume and application to several companies, calling, emailing them, leaving voicemails, only to be ghosted. And as time passed without a response, I started feeling frustrated, worried, and even a little rejected. I eventually came to God and said, Lord, you know my needs. You know I need a job. Open the doors of opportunity that need to be opened and close those that need to be closed. I put this in your hands. Now, did my worry instantly go away? No, but I can tell you that praying was a step in the right direction. In fact, Philippians 4:6 teaches us to be anxious for nothing. Or in other words, be worried for nothing. But in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. By praying, I started focusing on what God was going to do rather than my worries. When I prayed that prayer, I assumed that eventually one of those companies I applied to would call me back. They didn't. I didn't even get an email. But instead, I got a call out of the blue from a manager that I contacted over a year ago about a potential job opportunity back then, that nothing came out of it. We spoke once. It was a nice conversation, and that was it. Yet, he kept my contact information this entire time. And guess what? He was calling to offer me a job. Not only did God provide me with a job, but he also gave me one that allowed me to grow as a professional in so many ways. And that's a whole story in itself. God could have easily provided me just a job in order to meet my immediate needs. But God was concerned for my future, and he knew that the doors that I was knocking on wouldn't give me the future he had in store for me. At the end, I was worried and frustrated for nothing, because God was completely in control of everything. If God can do it for me, he can surely do it for you. God will always provide a way. It might not be the way you want it, but you have to place that request, that worry, that burden in God's hands first and let him take control. He has a great plan for you because he cares and values you. If worry ever tries to creep its ugly head into your life, go outside, look up, and be reminded that if God can take care of the birds in the air, why not you? God bless.